Ken, what are your thoughts on the commentary around that there'll be a glut of supply in the lithium supply chain? And going forward, do you think it's more of still of a really long-term outlook?
Yeah. To understand, the perspective around the way the market is today, it's worthwhile reflecting on where it's come from. So, the truth is, only 4 or 5 years ago, the lithium raw material supply chain was very boutique, and it served a whole kind of wide swathe of alternate uses for lithium. Ceramics and specialist glasses and the medical sector, there's a few other relatively minor ones. But all of a sudden, you had this critical mass start to emerge from the battery industry and the success of the lithium-ion battery. And China's entree to the market was through the development of a very, very large production base, drawing a lot of lithium new raw material through, but to a lesser lithium-ion technology. It's called lithium iron phosphate batteries. And the situation that we find ourselves in now is that the world's continued to move on with the battery technology, still based on a lithium-ion platform, but moving into alternate chemistries beyond lithium iron phosphate. And what's happened now is China's worked out that they were starting to fall behind. So they've tinkered with the industry to try and incentivise new technology in lithium-ion batteries. Same use, like same lithium, just a modification of the other chemistries that go into the battery. So same platform, lithium iron phosphate, moving into the next generation of batteries. Now the problem with that is the industry really wasn't ready for it. So we're going through a period of what would you call it? It's almost like rebalancing. And the good news is that I think it probably had to happen for China to continue to move forward with their battery technology. But it's upset the market, so there's no two ways about that. That means the price has come off, and hence the spodumene price has come off. But as to it creating the right future for China and demand growth, I'd say, yep, absolutely. And it's probably a move that's been worth making, albeit painful in the process. Yeah. Now, that's China. But then the rest of the world has just continued to go nuts. There is, I've dwelled on it a bit in the presentation, but Korea and Japan have become the alternate for the rest of the world because there is no other really significant lithium-ion battery making capacity. And the car makers are now trying to work out how they can get them to accelerate, to make bigger and bigger factories. And what that means is that there is going to be another shortage of lithium raw materials, especially in an environment where people can't get mines financed today. So, our challenge, but equally I'd argue our opportunity at Pilbara Minerals is, we sort of battle our way, maintain relationships in the industry. We'd expect to continue to keep making a margin because we are going to be a very low-cost operation, and then come out the other end ready for expansion with our customers' expanded capacity downstream. So it's a long-winded way of saying there is a market upset today. It should be relatively short-lived. Very difficult to put a date on it, but I would suggest not that long, based on all the moves that we see happening downstream. And then there's going to be another wave of growth. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Ken, I noticed you mentioned that the other significant deposits are partly lithium deposits in WA, are partly owned by, or completely owned by the majors, and you made the point that you guys weren't. But obviously, if a deal goes through in terms of selling a proportion of your project, then you will be partly owned by a major. Should we read into what you're saying there that means that deal is less likely to go ahead? Are you kind of suggesting that maybe in the future you'll go it alone rather than going with a partner?
No, don't read that into it. No, I'd like to be reasonably clear in that regard. No, my point was more. So if I go back a step, we've also said in the public domain that we would sell between, say, 25% and 49%. So the logic is it was always going to be a minority stake. So in pursuing that model, what we're saying is that you might very well be able to attract the right value for shareholders, and that would be a great outcome, but that's not the only outcome that we're after. What we're also after is making ourselves more relevant to the industry downstream by getting better connections to the rest of the supply chain, including chemical facilities and or battery makers, end users, just being more vertically integrated, because that's going to be, we think, healthy for our business in the medium and the long term. So to sort of put a line in the sand and say we're going to sell a minority stake, that has been our objective. We like what's happened in the strategic process so far, but we cannot guarantee that a deal's going to get done.
Is it difficult at this time, when there is these problems with the lithium market, for you to be negotiating a deal such as this? I mean, wouldn't it make sense maybe to put it back a bit in to a time potentially when the lithium market has picked up?
Yeah. No, it's an obvious question to ask you. I agree with the premise behind the question, except to say that it really depends on who your partner is and what you've been able to attract to the deal, because we're not only focused. Of course, we want to do the right thing by shareholders. That's the primary objective, but we're also looking to make ourselves more relevant to the entire industry downstream. So one of the ways you can do that is by bringing in the right partner to your project, have them help continue to expand the mine, create more critical mass, and ultimately, hopefully, interconnect that with more chemical capacity. So they're also important objectives. Yeah.
Thanks.
What particular troubles have your customers over in China who are running these plants having in terms of getting them online in time?
So for our guys, they've been mainly in the technical category, but when you look at the entire industry in China, there's been a big swathe of investment go in, like a lot of chemical conversion capacity, either approved, under construction, commissioning and or ramping up. And all of them will have slightly different sort of mechanics driving their success. In the case of our customers, as I said, it's more technical in nature. So, one example, General Lithium has moved from a batch process in hydroxide production to a continuous process. And in so doing, they've hit a limit in the plant's capacity because they under-installed equipment, given it's all new. So they're back retrofitting gear to get their plant through to 100% of design capacity. So that's just one example.
Yeah.
Others include things like, weather, construction, approvals delays, you name it, the list goes on. But it's definitely coming, and there's a lot of it.
When will they be able to ramp up to full production?
Well, it feels like 2020 is another big year. 2019 has already been a big year in the chemical conversion industry. A lot of new capacity has come on, but just ramping up.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more capacity coming in 2020 that's under construction. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's actually coming online next year?
Yeah.
Electric vehicles. Ken, how is Pilbara Mining going to contribute to Australia's healthy and safe roads now?
We would say we have a really important part to play. Yeah, so perhaps a good example to try and explain how that dynamic works. When we first raised the money for the Pilgangoora project, a cornerstone to our bond was the Clean Energy Finance Corporation. So their logic in participating in the bond was to ensure that, or to act as a catalyst for the rest of the money to come in to finance a lithium raw material facility that was ultimately going to create the batteries that go back into renewable networks and of course electrification of the transport industry. So they've recognised that our we're one example, but WA's got a few where we are an important player in changing the way energy is used and distributed, and it's great for WA. And there will likely be more too. That's another important point. We've got a great opportunity to interconnect the raw material to value-added products, and it's already happening, and there's probably more to come. So chemical plants, cathode material plants. I'm not sure we'd ever make batteries en masse successfully, maybe for specialist applications, but once you get into the mass market, it's very, very hard to compete with that cell manufacturing in Korea or China or Japan. Yeah.